Hey guys, I'm Kathy Kellogg. I'm the lead intake and marketing specialist here at Support Inc. It's so exciting to have you all join us today, and I just wanted to thank everybody that's able to attend. Joining us today, we're going to have Lily Kirkman going over the benefits and just kind of explaining what her role looks like here and what it means to take care of everybody. And also just wanted to briefly explain the purpose of these webinars. So of course, they're going to be educational and informative. And so every quarter or so, we choose a different topic or a different team at Support Inc. just to give you guys some more information on the services that we provide in-house. So in the past, I know we've covered the clinical team. We've also talked about the nurse team, our BATPAC committee, and things like that. We haven't had a chance to talk one-on-one with Lily yet about her role and what all that entails. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Lily so she can briefly introduce herself, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. Typically, the presentation lasts about a half hour or so, and then we open it up to questions and concerns after that. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Lily.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. Hi. Oops. Hi, everyone. I'm Lily, as Kathy introduced me. My title is Benefit Specialist. I've been working at Support for, quite some time now, almost 10 years. And today I'm going to talk about what my role is, what I can do to assist, and then we're also going to go over kind of the basics of Medicaid eligibility, Social Security, Medicare, things of that nature. So I'm super hopeful that this will be helpful and informative for everyone. My wish would be that at least everybody here leaves with one thing that they learned. So I don't know, that might be kind of putting too much faith in myself, but we'll see.
I highly doubt it. I think we're going to learn a lot. All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Can y'all see the PowerPoint okay?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right.
All right, here we go. Support needs.
All right, so we talked about the purpose of the webinars, the overview of today. You introduced yourself, and here we go.
Yeah, so my role and areas of expertise. So I help maintain the Medicaid eligibility for people in services. Majority of people I do that for live in host homes. Not all, though. Some families still maintain the eligibility for them. I'm also here to answer questions for family caregivers that need help with the Medicaid redeterminations or things of that nature. I assist with applying for Social Security benefits. I work alongside accounting to distribute personal needs for people that we are payee for, along with keeping the receipts and records for those. I help manage the Medicare enrollment for people who are Medicare eligible, and that entails either Medicare Part D or a Medicare Advantage plan. I help get people connected with special needs trusts or ABLE accounts, and I can help facilitate certain medical supplies. I'm not 100%, well, I think it would be quite impossible to know specifically the ins and outs of all medical supplies that are covered, but I can certainly point people in the right direction as it relates to that.
Sweet. There we go.
The ultimate benefit specialist. Who came up with that? Was that Brian? I've never referred to myself as the ultimate, but I guess I'll take it. So first up, I just wanted to touch on Medicaid eligibility and the DD waiver eligibility requirements. So I like to think of it as two different insurance policies. We have the Medicaid state plan, and that's something that it pays for things like doctor's appointments, hospital stays, prescriptions, medical equipment and supplies. And if that's renewed on a yearly basis, it's called the Medicaid redetermination, like I I mentioned before. In addition to the Medicaid state plan, the people that we serve are on the Medicaid HCBS-DD waiver, which, as I'm sure everyone knows, stands for the Home and Community-Based Services Developmental Disability Waiver. So that's the other insurance policy, as I refer to it as, that pays for daily care, such as living in a family caregiver situation, a host home, living in an apartment. It pays for day programs, supported employment, transportation to those, and certain medical equipment and supplies that aren't covered by the state plan. The waiver can provide, such as hearing aids or glasses. So because they have these two insurances, so to speak,
I'm in listen mode.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Lily.
yeah, no worries. So if because they have these two insurances, it's considered a long-term care type of Medicaid, and because of that, there are certain resource limits that apply. So you can't have more than $2,000 in countable resources. That's things like checking accounts, savings accounts, cash, stocks, bonds. You can have a burial plan up to $1,500. Oh, no worries, Ruth, you're good. Up to $1,500 is not countable. Anything beyond that is, though, and so that's why it's highly recommended that if somebody's getting any kind of funeral or burial plan, that the contract is made irrevocable, which just means that it can't be surrendered for cash. The cost of funeral plans is has gone up like astronomically recently, so that's why I always recommend that they're made irrevocable, so they can't be counted as assets. So when this yearly Medicaid redetermination happens, that's when people's cases are reviewed for the financial requirements. So the county who manages the Medicaid will review the case. You have to submit bank statements, pay stubs, any special needs trusts or ABLE accounts, and burial plans. And then because they are on the DD waiver, the other piece of this is that you have to be disabled to qualify for the waiver. The majority of people in our services receive some kind of Social Security disability benefit, and traditionally Medicaid uses Social Security's determination of somebody's disability as proof that they're disabled for this DD waiver. If somebody doesn't have or receive a current Social Security benefit, something that's called the Medicaid disability application has to be completed. That gets sent to a third party, and once they determine that the person is disabled, then they'll qualify for the DD waiver, and that determination is good for 5 years until it has to be completed again. One other piece of eligibility that I'd like to touch on that we've seen quite a bit of issue with for a couple different reasons is each year, I'm sure many of you are aware that the service plan for somebody in services is redone. Upon the completion or upon doing this service plan, there's a piece of, or there's a form rather, called the level of care certification page. And that form has to be sent from the case management agency to the county where the Medicaid is managed, and that recertifies the person for the waiver for the next service plan year. With the case management redesign, the end of the public health emergency because of COVID, and some technological issues, we've seen a lot of eligibility issues for folks who have come upon their new service plan year. We'll see their DD waiver eligibility drop off because the counties are either backlogged and haven't processed that new level of care certification page, or they haven't received it from the case management agency. So another piece that I just wanted to touch on was Medicare. Not everybody in our services has Medicare. I think a lot of people think retirement when you think of Medicare. That's traditionally how most people qualify. You get to a certain age and you're eligible, but some of the people in our services qualify for Medicare because they are entitled to a Social Security benefit called SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Insurance. This type of benefit is paid out of what somebody has paid into the Social Security system. So that Social Security tax that you see on your paycheck, that's where this money is funded, or that's how it's funded. And a disabled person, if they've worked enough, what Social Security calls quarters or credits in their life, they can draw off of their own record and qualify for SSDI that way. If they have a parent that has either retired or passed away, they can be entitled on their parent's work record as a disabled adult child and qualify that way. And so once somebody has been entitled to SSDI for 2 years, the Medicare enrollment automatically starts. So the enrollment into Medicare is automatic, and typically Medicare will also automatically enroll the person onto a free Medicare Part D plan. Medicare Part D is specifically prescription drug plans because original Medicare doesn't cover prescriptions. Original Medicare is just parts A and B. A is hospital insurance and B is medical insurance. When somebody has both Medicare and Medicaid, like the people in our services, their Medicare premium is taken care of, so they don't have to worry about paying that monthly Medicare premium, which I think is don't quote me on it. I can't remember how much it is this year. It's like 170 some, I want to say. But in addition to that premium being taken care of, they also qualify for Medicare's Extra Help program, which is a low income subsidy that pays for certain Medicare Part D plans. So there's also no premium owed for that, but it has to be specific plans to choose. There's only a handful that you can choose from where you don't have to pay that premium. And then there are also a handful of Medicare Advantage plans that are free for people with disabilities, and that incorporates all A, B, and D parts into one plan. Once somebody is enrolled into Medicare, that becomes their primary insurance and Medicaid becomes the secondary insurance, because Medicaid is always the payer of last resort. And so that's true if somebody is younger and still on a parent's insurance policy. Medicaid will always be second or payer of last resort. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention with some of the Medicare Advantage plans, some of them come with some extra perks, like United Healthcare offers one, and I think Anthem offers one, but there's a monthly stipend for certain over-the-counter items and grocery items. And then if you're in a Medicare Advantage plan, you get access to the Silver Sneakers program, which to my knowledge is free and reduced rates for different gyms. And the Medicare plan can be managed by creating a Medicare account on Medicare.gov or by calling Medicare directly, which is 1-800-Medicare. I think the E is just missing off of that number. And changing plans is typically only allowed when someone is new to Medicare during open enrollment, which is October to December each year, or they're allowed to change one time during the rest of the year if they're Medicaid eligible, except for the month of January. It's a lot of information.
Thanks for sharing. I didn't know the exception to the month of January.
Yeah, I think it's because Medicare, like the open enrollment ends in December. And so they're like, I guess you missed out. So you can't do it in January. So I briefly talked about SSDI, but I want to go over it again and also talk about SSI. So The two types of Social Security disability benefit that we see are SSI and SSDI. I think there's a lot of confusion around those. People use the letters kind of interchangeably, but they are technically two different benefits, and they have some different rules and eligibility requirements. So SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income, and it's funded through general tax revenue. That's a great question. The resources and burial amount separate? No. So it's a combined $2,000. But 1,500 of the burial policy, up to 1,500, isn't counted. Anything over 1,500 is a countable resource. So that's why it's important to get a statement of irrevocability put into the contract. So SSI financial eligibility for it is similar to the long-term care Medicaid, where you can't have more than 2,000 in resources, up to 1,500 in the burial plan. You have to be disabled under Social Security's rules, and upon application, you have to meet a certain income limit. But once you have it, you can work while receiving SSI. It is reduced, and the reason being it's supplemental, so it's meant to supplement and not supplant any other type of income. So SSI is reduced by the following when someone is working. The first $85 made in a month is generally not counted, and then after that, the wages are divided in half to determine the total countable wages. Those countable wages are then subtracted from the maximum SSI payment, which this year is $943. And then we have SSDI, which I briefly mentioned before, which stands for Social Security Disability Insurance. And that is funded through what someone has paid into the system or through a parent that has paid into the system. Once they have worked enough and earned enough credits, they are eligible to apply for SSDI. If someone has not worked or is unable and became disabled prior to age 22, they can be entitled to SSDI on a parent's work record as a disabled adult child. Once the parent has either started drawing on their record or has passed away, and that SSDI benefit is about 50% of what the parent's monthly benefit is. SSDI is not reduced in accordance with wages like SSI is, but they do have an income limit if you are working, and that is called, they refer to it as the substantial gainful activity or SGA amount, and that amount in 2024 is $1,550 per month. So on to supplies. The Medicaid state plan will pay for incontinence supplies such as gloves, pull-ups, briefs, underpads, perineal creams, and washes with a valid prescription from the PCP. It will also pay for wipes only if the person is under 21 years of age. So for people that we serve who need wipes that are over 21 or 21 or over, I should say, we get those through the service plan. So there's a section in the service plan called disposable supplies, and that's where the units for wipes has to be input. A lot of case management agencies are now requiring a prescription from the primary care physician as well in order to put units in that section of the service plan. So typically what happens is, for example, if I order wipes for somebody, I get the invoice sent to me, and then I send that invoice to the correct case management agency for the person, and then they bill the waiver and send payment to the supply company. The DD waiver will also pay for glasses and hearing aids, as these are not covered by Medicare or Medicaid, but the case management agency has to pay the vendor directly for those, and they won't reimburse after the fact. So that's why it's highly recommended if you have somebody that needs glasses that you don't pay up front for them or pay to pick them up, it's hard because somebody needs glasses and then you have to wait for this third party, i.e. the case management agency, to pay for them before you can pick them up. It can be kind of a convoluted system that we work in, but that's just how it is done. And in terms of what Medicaid will cover, what I like to use as a general rule of thumb is they will only cover something if they deem it medically necessary. So is the item medically necessary, and is it the lowest cost or most cost-effective item the person could use? And if the answer to either of those is no, typically it's not something that will be covered. But like I said, I don't know 100% the ins and outs of what Medicaid does and doesn't cover. I wish I did, but I don't know if anybody truly knows all of that.
That's fair.
I feel like I kind of blew through that. So please, Kathy, how do you want to set up the questions and answers?
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel like the timing was perfect of that. So yeah, I mean, we can just open it up to questions and concerns. Sometimes people add them in the chat. You're welcome to do that if you'd like, or if you want to unmute yourself with a question. Yeah. Yeah. Don't everybody rush at once. I know you're eager to raise your hand, so.
There's no such thing as a silly question.
Yeah, definitely. Not with this stuff. I actually used to do your job, Lily, like 12 years ago in Tennessee. And I just feel like so much has changed that it's hard for me to even wrap my mind around things, not to mention it can vary from state to state and what Medicaid resources are available. So yeah, we're here if anybody has any Colorado specific questions.
I have a question. So thinking about like the SSI and like them starting to work, I guess my biggest question is, I know that we went through the 18 to 21 program. And so I don't know if any of the work stuff that they had them doing counted towards their work. So I know like we get the ticket to work and things like that for them. So did any of that, how would we know if that counted towards them, or is it when they get their first like paying job that starts to count towards Social Security? So like if they're already getting SSI and they're now starting to work with like a job coach and stuff at a regular job, like how do we determine that so that they don't lose their benefits? And because like right now we're just getting into that, and then we're like doing the fight right now with the job of wanting him to work too many hours. And it's like, okay, this is a person that's never worked a job before, and then you want this many hours, and they're like, well, we can't give less hours. It's just been a mess. So I just want a little guidance if it's there.
Absolutely. So sorry if I misunderstood your question, but it sounds like they were working previously a small amount. As long as they were paying, taxes, Social Security would have record of that work history. So in terms of future potential benefits, that would be accounted for if we're talking SSDI. But for now, if they're working, I think the easiest way to maintain the SSI is to create an account on Social Security's website. I don't know if you've done that, but if you go to ssa.gov, you can sign up for an account for them, and you can see in real time what their monthly benefit is. And there should also be an option to report wages. And that is really helpful because Social Security, I mean, they already count wages in a 2-month behind fashion, that as a general rule, but even beyond that, they're typically behind on processing things. Does that kind of help answer your question? I mean, any amount made over $85, once they're no longer a full-time student or in school, the wages start to count.
Okay, so they were still considered a DPS student during that time frame, though. So then
Okay,
that wouldn't have
yeah.
counted then.
Correct.
Okay, so right now is basically the beginning right now.
Yes.
Okay, that was my big question.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I just threw a bunch of information at you.
No, that helped me because that helped me get to what I was trying to ask.
Okay,
So
okay.
that helped. Okay, so starting now, moving forward is
Yes.
so what for the ticket to work and stuff, do we request that? Or how how we get 9 months of work without it
Mhm.
being counted? Is there certain steps that need to be done to have that happen, or how does that work?
Did you get the letter for the ticket to work already?
It's been a while because they didn't realize that we were participating in the 18 to 21 program at
Okay.
the public school. So I don't have a current copy of that.
Okay. And then are you working with DVR for
Yes.
the job? Okay. So if working through DVR, that should regenerate the ticket to work program.
Okay. Okay. So maybe reach out to the DVR counselor
Yes.
for the. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Looks like we have a couple of questions in the chat too. So
Yeah.
there are no resource limits for SSDI, but because they're in the Medicaid services, we have to abide by what Medicaid's limits are, unfortunately. And then how do we request a BDQY? We are reconciling.
Well, yeah, what's a BDQY?
So it's a benefits query, and when I've done that, you might be able to get it if you have an SSA account. You might be able to request that online if you have an SSA account on myssa.gov or ssa.gov. But I've gotten one by calling the local Social Security office and requesting that. You might have to call more than once if the person you talk to forgets to print and mail out the query, but that's how I've gotten it, and it lists out all of the benefit history. So it's basically just like a benefits history of what Social Security has paid out to somebody. Son just turned 18 a few months ago, and I'm trying to figure out how to apply to SSI for him. Do you assist with this process? Yeah, so I can definitely help with applying for SSI for somebody. What I always suggest is starting an application online or calling your local office is the easiest way to get that started. They'll probably have you go in person at some point. The initial application you may be able to do over the phone, but I usually start it online at ssa.gov. It does require you to create an account, but that is usually helpful to at least get your foot in the door, and they'll reach out to you to set up an appointment for the application itself. They'll ask you some preliminary questions, but there are multiple steps for the application.
Good questions. Does anybody else have any questions or want to chime in with any information that you might have? I personally feel like I'm learning a few new acronyms today. So BDQI, that was interesting to me.
Well, to be fair, I only knew 2 of the letters. I couldn't remember what the rest of them were. Tried online a month ago and you haven't heard anything. I can send you the number to your local office if you give me your zip code. 80831. Cool. Okay. Let me make sure that I have your email address. Or actually, I could probably look it up. Okay, I'll look up the local office information for you and send you their phone number. I'm kind of surprised that you haven't heard anything. I wish I knew what their timelines were. But a month. It could be that they just haven't gotten to it yet, but I'll go ahead and find that phone number for you. So you can follow up with a phone call just to see. They should be able to look up the initial application that you did and see where it's at. What is the resource level for Medicaid if receiving SSDI? So it's the same. It's still $2,000. And so that's what I was saying before, that unfortunately, while SSDI doesn't have a resource limit, because we have to abide by Medicaid rules and regs, it's still 2,000.
Do you feel like you've learned a lot since being in this role, Lily?
Oh, yeah. I feel like I learned something new, geez, almost every day, if I'm going to be honest with you. But it's helped. Like, I think I have the right personality for it because I do love learning, and I'm kind of a go-getter. If I don't know the answer to something, I will do my darndest to figure it out. Yes, ABLE accounts do help with the resource limit for SSI and Medicaid. So ABLE accounts are non-countable resources. And yeah, it's a great way to have somebody save money without it counting towards that $2,000 limit. There's also special needs trusts, which are more traditional trusts that can be helpful. It kind of depends on the situation because ABLE accounts have a yearly amount that you can't contribute more than that. And they have, I think the grand, I don't think you can have more. I think it's $100,000 that you can, that's the cap. And I think the yearly contribution, it's like $16,000 or $17,000 per year. Whereas a special needs trust, to my knowledge, doesn't have yearly or overall limits. They do have more rules insofar as when you have a special needs trust, there's typically a trustee, and it's their duty to help make sure that the person remains eligible for Medicaid. You can have both a trust and an ABLE account. So as long as that special needs trust is Medicaid approved, and ABLE accounts are obviously Medicaid approved as well. So I typically, when I work with special needs trust, I primarily just work with established companies that's what they do, because that way I know that they're going to get the Medicaid approval for me. I have seen people, families work with a lawyer and get Medicaid approval for it through the lawyer. And does someone get a special needs trust approved by Medicaid? It's a great question. I don't know if there's like a specific entity that we submit the information to. I primarily recommend that people work with a lawyer that is heavily experienced in this field. I would need to do some digging and see if I could find, like, if there's a division of Medicaid that is specific to special needs trust approvals. I'm sure we could find something. Or I could maybe reach out to, what I was saying was I primarily work with like Colorado Fund for People with Disabilities or Life Enrichment Trust. They are companies that are established that help. They provide a service of, getting somebody a special needs trust. I might be able to reach out to someone at CFPD and just kind of say, hey, just picking your brain on this. How, if we had somebody that was trying to set up a special needs trust, privately or independently, do you know a contact that we would use at Medicaid to get approval? So I'm happy to do that, and I can let you know.
Sounds good. Is there any other updates to be aware of for 2024? Anything recent besides like the public emergency ending or case management redesign? Anything else that you think listeners should be aware of?
Oh, nice. Thanks, Ruth. It's now 550. Wow. That's way more than I remembered it being. That's great. They must have increased it, or I just misremembered, and I apologize if that's the case. In terms of anything we need to be aware of, I have seen some improvement on the eligibility issues for people. I haven't heard anything specific as to changes or news.
Sounds good. No news is good news, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Anything else before I stop recording? Okay.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ruth. So for the VA benefit, there's a question of if I have navigating VA benefits. I have limited experience with it. My understanding is that if somebody has as far as insurance goes, if somebody gets insurance, the VA insurance is primary, then Medicare, then Medicaid, if applicable for the Medicare portion. And I think from what I've read on the VA website, the benefit eligibility requirement is similar to SSDI, where the person has to have been disabled prior to, I believe, age 22. And if their parent retires, they can be eligible for a VA benefit as well, similar to SSDI. So I unfortunately, because I don't have a ton of experience with it, I don't have, here's who you call or here's where you look it up. But I actually do think if you go on the VA website, I'm trying to remember, I'm racking my brain, I apologize. I feel like there was information there regarding this, and I don't know if they have like local offices similar to Social Security, but that would be my suggestion. I'm so sorry. My dog did so well this whole time, not barking.
It happens.
She just had to make herself known right at the end. Anyway, my suggestion would be to see if you can find like a local VA office to call. But they should be eligible for both. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be eligible for that. And, you know, Social Security, if they are on SSI, I will say that VA, if they're receiving a VA benefit, that would be counted as income, and SSI would be reduced.
Sounds good. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and conclude the meeting. Yeah.
Thanks everybody for joining. I really appreciate you all coming, and I hope that something was learned or this was enjoyable to some degree.
It's always enjoyable.